MoneyWatch, the global economy is at risk of severe damage if climate change continues to accelerate. A new CBS News report explains how each degree of global warming could drive up costs as a result of failing crops, more extreme weather disasters, and rising inequality. CBS News MoneyWatch reporter Irina Ivanova co-authored that report and joins me now for more. Irina, always great to have you on the show. So, obviously, we've already experienced a 1.1 degree increase since the mid-19th century. In what ways is the economy already feeling the cost of climate change?
Thanks, Lana. So economists are just now putting numbers to this really complex phenomenon. One recent estimate that we've seen says about 1% of the economy has been reduced by climate change. So that's about 200 billion in lost production. Of course, we've also had weather disasters. Last year, those cost us 95 billion. And we know climate change makes storms more intense, makes them wetter, makes them more expensive because they cause more damage. But those numbers don't tell you that much. What's really interesting, what economists say, is that it's creating shifts. So if you think about the U.S., unlike many other countries, the U.S. is very large and very geographically diverse. So we have some coastal areas, especially, say, the Southeast, that are going to be hit hard by climate change. Some of them are becoming unlivable. Some of them are producing less economically. And then you have other areas like the far north that are going to be potentially better off because they might have, for instance, a longer growing season. They might have a longer summer. The same thing is happening with deaths. So if you think about extreme heat and extreme cold, they both cause premature deaths. As the climate warms, we're having a lot more extreme hot days than extreme cold days. So we have more people dying from extreme heat. We have fewer people dying from extreme cold. And so on net, if you just look at the numbers, you would think that kind of balances out. On net, there isn't that big a change. But of course, when you think about those lives and those people, it's anything but balancing out. And we're seeing heat waves in places like the Pacific Northwest. We're seeing cold snaps in Texas earlier this year. These are
right, and
really...
And it's not just that things will stop at that 1.1 degree, but researchers are predicting that there's going to be exponential growth, that global warming of 4 or 5 degrees or even more potentially would be considered a worst case scenario for the economy. Irina, what would be the major consequences at that point?
That's exactly right. 4 degrees warming is beyond anything that human civilization has experienced. Scientists say it would be catastrophic. And at that point, the economic damage really becomes exponential. So, and what I mean by that is, 4 degrees, that's 4 times the amount of warming we've already had. Already, we've seen it has had severe economic effects. But 4 degrees of warming economically is not 4 times worse than we've already seen. It's about 10 times worse. And that's because as the climate heats up even more, all these disasters, all these changes really stack up on one another. You have the droughts, the floods, the storms, they all cascade and create these exponential economic effects. So think about a much smaller level of warming, let's say 2 degrees warming, which scientists say would still be catastrophic, would change large parts of the planet. At that level of warming, nearly all the world's coral reefs, 99% of them, are dead. That means food. There are communities that rely on these ecosystems for food. And then think about tourism. It's a huge part of the economy, for small tropical nations where a lot of these reefs are located. And then think about crop failures. Corn, the most widespread crop in the U.S., is very sensitive to heat. And when you start getting a lot of days that are over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, it really starts to fail. The amount of food that you can get out of it drops significantly. And so with crops, we are seeing these shifts where we have these crop failures in Central America that are contributing to human migration north. at the same time as there are tracts of new farmland in far north Canada that were too cold to farm before that are now opening up. And then finally, there's the impact on humans and human productivity. As we get this hotter, more extreme weather, it will really hit people who work outside, who do agriculture, transportation, manufacturing, these people who we call the essential workers. And when you think about indoor workers, they work less well. When it gets hot, human bodies start to fail. We just produce less. We end work earlier. We take more breaks. There's actually a recent working paper that tried to calculate this in the US, and they found that when the temperature is over 86 degrees Fahrenheit, that costs a county $20 per person per day. So that is economic activity that did not happen because it was too hot.
Those cascading effects. Irina, thank you.
Thanks for having me.